Shalom. I am going to be having a discussion with Rabbi Malot in almost 2 hours. Well, no, actually, in 1 hour, sorry. And this concept of Parrhesia has been coming up in my mind, and it's really important, and I thought I would discuss it. Rabbi Malot is here. And so Parrhesia is the exact word comes from a Greek idea which means free speech. And of course, free speech is one of those things we talk about a lot in this little corner. But Parrhesia also has Parrhesia is how the most people say it. But in Hebrew, we talk about Parrhesia, as a concept as well. And it also has become a concept in Christian thought through the Greek. So what took place in ancient Greece was that somebody who had a right to speak their opinion, to speak their mind freely, for example, in the agora or in the Senate, was given a specific right to say whatever they wanted to speak the truth. And this also translated into the Jewish context. When we speak halachically of somebody who does something befarhesia, we mean that they do it in public. And the way in halacha where it's spoken about most is somebody who is mechalel Shabbat befarhesia, somebody who desecrates the Sabbath in public, is considered outside of the community. Is mechalel Shabbat befarhesia is I believe it says in Shulchan Aruch he has the same he is treated as a Gentile in every way, and that is because the Sabbath is a commemoration of God's creation of the world, and somebody who denies God as the creator of the world by desecrating the Sabbath publicly is considered a kofer be'ikar, somebody who denies those things which are essential to Judaism. Now, in Christian thought, Parrhesia is refers to speaking boldly, and actually, the past two popes, both Pope Benedict and Pope Francis, have been focusing on this concept of Parrhesia, especially because in the Greek Bible it speaks about the apostles and Paul declaring the Gospels boldly, speaking boldly about Jesus and the Gospel, and evangelizing boldly. And all of these concepts are really related to, especially I think they've come back into importance partially because of how mass media is affecting our discussions. So Michel Foucault, somebody I am not a fan of, did a series of discussions at Berkeley about Parrhesia and the relationship with that and the free speech movement. And of course, this goes into the everything we talk about regarding the Twitter files and tech censorship and our political discussion. The fact is that all language has a context, right? So, my recent discussions about both Mormonism and or the LDS and Lutheranism, it's been a difficult needle to thread, because you're talking to so many different people with so many different contexts simultaneously, right? So when I talk about Jordan B. Cooper, and he's somebody whose job it is to create a Lutheran identity through the works of Martin Luther and a sort of revival and veneration for Luther himself. And then there are the Lutheran members of this little corner, two of whom are pretty good friends of mine, and both of them were not happy with my treatment of Luther. And I mean, when you look at it and you compare it to my treatment of, say, Joseph Smith, it seems very contradictory, at least. Hypocritical, probably, people would say, and the problem is the context of who you are speaking about and what you are focusing on. I keep on going back to this example that John Vervaeke gives of somebody who stops you on the street and says, "Excuse me, I'm out of gas." And you respond, "There's a gas station down the street." Right? Now, in those two sentences, there's so much context, right? "Excuse me" he didn't do you a wrong. He's asking for a small bit of your time. And when he says, "I'm out of gas," he doesn't mean he's out of gas. He means the car that he is in is out of petroleum, right? And almost out, but there's obviously some left, right? And when you say the gas station down the street, obviously it's a public gas station that he would be able to use, as opposed to, a hydrogen filling station or, some sort of private co-op or something like that. Like, you wouldn't, even if it's a Costco down the street, you wouldn't just say there's a gas station down the street, because maybe he's not a Costco member, right? There's so much context poured into everything that we say. And then we're speaking in what the Jewish context, the halachic context, would be Parrhesia, right? We're speaking publicly. And beside the fact that there are real halachic differences, the verse says Hanistarot Lashem Elokeinu V'Haniglot Lanu. The those things that are hidden are wow. Shane, hello. Did you have something to add, or?
Well, a question. I heard you draw parallel between Luther, yeah,
Between Luther
and Smith.
yes.
So I'm definitely more what you're drawing.
Hold on, there's apparently an echo. Let me see if I can fix the echo.
Am I still echoing on your side? I'm sure
You're
I'm
not
echoing
echoing
on
to
my side.
me. Am I echoing? Are you hearing an echo when you speak?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's my fault, and I have to figure out why that is. Because if it's continuing, oh, okay, should be fine now.
Okay. Yeah, I don't hear my echo anymore.
Yeah, it's definitely my fault. I've been trying to fix my sound, so yes,
Well,
go ahead.
so the thing that I had mentioned to you, the whole Book of Mormon thing just bothers me in a unique way that I don't have any parallels for, and it's because um, and Paul did a whatever you call his podcast thing. He talked today about the different way that Tom Holland views um, things, trying to get people into the sort of prehistorical mindset where we're not
Pre-modern,
doing this
pre-modern, yes.
dualism between the physical and the spiritual, whatever. And there's an aspect of the writings that are contained in um, whatever you call that, because they call it. God, I don't even want to get into whatever they call their text,
They call
but
it the restored gospel.
it's presented as though there is some sort of physical historical events that took place. And that's not
Okay,
the same as teaching theological principles which are based on maybe a wrong interpretation of something or a selfish mindset or an agenda. There's something just categorically different about telling stories in narrative form where specific people engage with other specific people in a land far away. Unless it's labeled as allegory or fiction, it's uniquely just cringe.
okay. So the part of the thing that's going on here is that Joseph Smith was actually I would blame it partially on Luther, but yeah, Joseph Smith, very much his writings are 18th 19th century writings, and they are in the modernist frame in a way that when we try to look back on modern writings. So, for example, let's talk about the uh, two species of communion, right? The wine and the bread, right? When you're talking about transubstantiation, right? Does the bread and wine turn into the blood and body of Jesus, right? One of the things that the Protestant reformers, really focused on was this idea of, well, no, it's just bread. I mean, that's not meat. That's not that it doesn't turn into blood. The wine doesn't actually turn into blood, right? If you look at it under a microscope, it's not turning into blood. And that's a way of looking at things literally that the Protestant Reformation and the Enlightenment um, really went overboard on. And so, and I would say Joseph Smith and his way of looking at things was very was very infected by that type of thinking, to the point where so they because of prohibition, the LDS actually, they do communion with bread and water, right? And there's a discussion about whether or not you should say this wine or this water, right? That type of, it's a difficult, I mean, it's, you're hitting upon something incredibly important. And Paul, as homeroom, his 2-hour video was very focused on that. So, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. It's, but I was actually talking in a very different way. But I do think when we look back at Martin Luther, and I would say his child, Joseph Smith, it is a sort of literalism that probably Jordan B. Cooper would say, no, you can't. Luther was not that literal, and he would deny that it's the rightful legacy of Luther, whereas Vervaeke would be like, I'm sorry, but this came all packaged with Luther, and it doesn't really matter. Like, the literalism with which Jordan B. Cooper will say it wasn't what Luther believed, is itself a type of modern literalism which doesn't work. Am I making myself clear?
I just don't have enough uh, awareness of like maybe Luther's writings to have any sense of what you're comparing to what. Um, I do have
Well,
some familiarity with the writings that are attributed to sort of Joseph Smith's prophecy stuff,
mm-hmm.
and there is a fair amount of it that's very literal, and it is considered gospel. And I don't know if you're implying that some of Luther's writings are also given that level of sort of authority within like Protestantism or specifically Lutheranism. I know you were
Oh,
talking about him having this air of almost apostleship or what do you call the idolatry that is um, in the Catholic Church, the like the Pope or whatever that is. Um, like whatever, it doesn't really
yeah,
matter.
I don't want people to get too mad at me because of I'm not like, okay, as far as canonizing saints and venerating saints,
That's the word you use,
right?
saint. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and the spiritual tradition I come from, they call me a saint. Um, and so it sort of diminishes the term to irrelevant, except except in the sense that there is some divine aspect of me that I'm in tune with that I wasn't prior to um, submitting to Jesus' lordship. So, amen to that. I
Well,
don't want to get off into my specific theological background and beliefs. Like, do I act as though I believe things that I do theologically? Like, whatever. I don't know. Um, I just
you're cutting in and out. I well, I'll read what Bart said. Smith has had a dizzying array of sects to choose from in his context, interesting relationship between his teetotalism and teachings against caffeine. This makes modern Mormonism as flexible, ranging from exclusively cutting off blacks to the priesthood to universally allowing to baptize dead, unaware non-Mormons that appeals to modern converts. They don't believe Christ has had blood in his resurrected body. Yeah, and then, I mean, it all gets very, very complicated as far as what did Joseph Smith himself believe, and what do various forms of um, LDS members and other Mormons believe. Well, we're veering off incredibly from the topic of Parrhesia, and maybe just to tie it back in, part of the problem is that we are having a discussion where so many people are using words in so many different ways that communicating publicly, communicating like I'm saying one thing, and some people are understanding A, and other people are understanding B, and other people are understanding C, and it's not like there isn't some correlation between A, B, and C, but and what I actually mean to convey. But when you speak to people, when you speak to a person, you can calibrate your language to try to speak to that person and make yourself understood. But the larger the audience, the more people you are speaking to, right? And then I wanted to give this example about Parrhesia. So Rabbi Ovadia Yosef has a very famous responsum regarding whether or not it's specifically about the wine that's used underneath the chuppah when during a marriage ceremony, and the very nice wine is brought, and it's not mevushal. So and wine that is not mevushal, that is somebody who is a mechalel Shabbat befarhesia, somebody who desecrates the Sabbath on desecrates the Sabbath publicly, is known to desecrate the Sabbath. If he touches sacramental wine, then the wine becomes not kosher, and the question becomes: you're doing a wedding ceremony, and the groom himself is somebody who does not keep the Sabbath. He's known to be somebody who does not keep the Sabbath. And can you give him the wine to drink, right? The sacramental wine at his own wedding. Can you give it to him to drink, right? And there's a whole question there. And what Rav Ovadia Yosef points out is, look, this is somebody who's coming to an Orthodox rabbi to have an Orthodox Jewish wedding, right? And is this person, even though he drives a car on the Sabbath and is known by everybody to drive a car on the Sabbath, like, is he the type of person who makes Kiddush on Friday nights and then drives? Like, how do you call such a person a kofer be'ikar? How do you call such a person somebody who is denying the essentials of the Jewish faith? And he says he's not a kofer. He's a mabulbal. He's just confused, right? But in a religious context, that sort of in a religious context, that sort of confusion and public confusion. Like, how do you draw lines? How do you make things clear? And I think that's why this same word, Parrhesia or Parrhesia, or however you want to call it, free speech, is I don't know what this word ecclesia supplet means or what context it's used in. Hello, Michael. You must be new here. At least I don't recognize the name. But how do we continue to have conversations when everybody is carrying a recording device on them constantly? And there are different conversations that you have. I'm thinking of a particular person who I pulled aside to, well, actually, not just one person. I've done this several times. I've spoken to many people in this low corner about intimate details of their sex life. Things we would never discuss in public. I would never discuss them in public. We are not supposed to discuss them in public. Yet, at the same time, we do discuss these things very publicly. And if we don't discuss them publicly, then there's a whole category of people who simply don't have access to them, right? And going back to what I said about, for example, Martin Luther, Rabbi Malot says your treatment of Luther was rightfully negative. He was a wicked, despicable anti-Semite. Hitler learned much from him and put his words into action. And look, if Martin Luther is your saint, if Martin Luther is somebody who defines Christianity for you, one of the members of this low corner, who I have a lot of respect for, Nesharim, Ben Cooper, he cannot believe that those writings, like regarding the Shem Meforash, or on the Jews and their lies, he does not believe that these were even written by Martin Luther. He believes they were written by Catholics trying to defame Martin Luther. But if you do believe that Martin Luther was this great person that your children should look up to, and you do believe that he wrote on the Jews and their lies, what am I supposed to do with that as a Jew? Right? And if we're having kumbaya ecumenism, right, then I sit nicely and talk to Lutherans, and we just don't discuss on the Jews and their lies. But kumbaya ecumenism is not true speech. It's not Parrhesia, that's for sure. And I don't think it has its place. It can help start a rapprochement, right? And this was actually something I was explaining to some people. You know, the Talmud says quite clearly that peace is a higher value in Judaism than truth. And the example is given, for example, in the Talmud, that Ketzad Meraktem, how do we act before a bride? We tell her she's beautiful. Oh, what if she's not? What if her wedding dress is hideous? You still tell her she's beautiful. And that's a different type of truth. That's a different value in the hierarchy, because when you say God is love and God is truth and God is justice, none of those three things, love cannot be God, truth cannot be God, and justice cannot be God, because all of those things become idols. And then when we are speaking in front of everybody, Parrhesia, we are speaking boldly. Just another one of those lies Luther was talking about. Exactly, the Jews and their lies. In order for us to actually have real conversations, we have to speak more with Parrhesia than we do now. Parrhesia than we do now. And if you haven't seen the Twitter files from today, I highly recommend them. There were doctors from Harvard Medical School and Stanford Medical School and many other doctors, top doctors, who were being censored on Twitter. That's important. That's really, really important. And at the same time, there is this real concern, and it is a real concern, right? That you have little girls going on Facebook and Twitter and seeing these images of people's lives being perfect, which is causing depression, anxiety, and actual hospitalizations. And if you need documentation of this, look at the work of Jonathan Haidt. It is the statistics are scary, and we have to pay attention to this change in our society, and possibly, in fact, I think definitely, really start understanding that making real divisions between how we speak to children and how we speak to adults, and having fora, that's the actual plural of forums, where it is understood that different things are said in different ways to different people in different fora. And I don't have easy answers about this stuff. But I wanted to address it, and one of the reasons I wanted to address it is that I am going to, in half an hour, be having this discussion with Rabbi Malot. And the first question is going to be, what can we say on YouTube? Can we speak frankly on YouTube the way that we would speak if he were in my office and it was just the two of us? And the simple answer is no. The simple answer is very definitely no. There are things I am speaking to Father Stephen DeYoung about through email that I, it's not ready for prime time. It's not ready. These are things we are trying to figure out together. That, yeah, Freedom's Lunch said nope, nope. Hanistarot Lashem Elokeinu vehaniglot lanu. Those things which are hidden belong to the Lord our God, and those which are revealed are ours. And another reference I will bring up is when there is a very large gathering of Jews, possibly too large, for much larger than anything that has actually happened. There is a blessing that that the rabbis decreed to be said on such a large gathering, which is, I should actually look up the actual words, but it's something like, blessed is he who keeps secrets secret. And the explanation given to that is, you could never have 600,000 people together without killing each other if they didn't have secrets from each other. And there's truth to that. Okay, discussion with Rabbi Malotz is in half an hour. I will see you guys then.